The ACC's collapse is finally here, and somehow it's more embarrassing than the Pac-12's. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. Let's go through how the ACC is finally done, and it's even uglier than when the Pac-12 collapsed. Also, the NCAA could file for bankruptcy as a part of a suit that would charge them $20 million in the event of a loss. And finally, we talk Brett Yormark being the king of college football, a move that he has made that makes him #1. The ACC collapsing is something that was imminent. We've talked about this for months, dating back to when Florida State and Clemson first sued. Recently, the Attorney General in Florida also sued the conference. And now here is the final straw for me in what takes any opportunity for that conference to stay together and throws it out the window, and that is public idiocy at the top or moves that make you think, that was so desperate that there's no way that everyone in the room in North Carolina and Miami and the schools that aren't suing you are going to stick around and deal with this. Brandon Marcello tweets this. Jim Phillips, the commissioner, on ACC's ESPN deal. Now, let me preface this. ESPN has the option, as we found out through previous lawsuits, to, in essence, end the deal in 2025. They can decide this coming February if they want to be done with the ACC, and the last year they'd be liable for that conference would be 2027. Now, let me ask you this. If you are a TV network, ESPN namely, with a gajillion dollars, would you pay as much or the same or at all for a product that doesn't have Florida State or Clemson and replace them with Cal, Stanford, and SMU? I don't think so. Everything points toward ESPN not renewing a contract as it is in 2025 and through 2027 being done with the conference as a whole, if not completely restructured to the point where it's no longer a viable option for a North Carolina or a Miami. That's why those schools want out. That is why Clemson and Florida State wanted out in general. That's why Clemson wanted to see the ESPN documentation, which they have their hands on right now. And as we know those two schools are leaving, we understand that from a business perspective, ESPN cannot continue paying what they are paying for the ACC. Here's what the commissioner, Jim Phillips, had to say. The contract runs through 2036. That is a 9-year discrepancy from what we've seen recently and what ESPN could do. He continues, and we're working internally with them on a piece of the contract. That's it. That's it. That's where you become the George Kliavkoff of this, where everyone looks at you and points and laughs. Jim Phillips just said the contract runs through 2036, and we're working internally with them on a piece of the contract. Jim, a piece of the contract is talking about whether or not you're going to have games on Friday or Saturday in week 1. A piece of the contract is not whether or not ESPN ends the contract in 2025. They decide in February what they do in those offices in Bristol. And Jim Phillips responds to this by saying, don't freak out. We're just kind of working on the side, behind the scenes on a little bit of the contract. I don't know if that's just a piece of the contract. I don't know if that's just a portion of what the discussion should be between Jim Phillips and ESPN. And I don't think those conversations are going to go very well for a commissioner who, in essence, at least what we know from these lawsuits, hid. He hid the contract. Like it was lock and key. This grant of rights, ESPN, all the you understand how hard it was for Clemson to get a hold of the TV deal their very conference has with the network? That's not a good thing. And the commissioner goes out and says, hey, we're just talking about it behind the scenes. Phillips goes on to say, I can't go into details on that. Yeah, no kidding, huh? The partnership is not going away or being affected in a negative way at all. Florida State and Clemson are leaving the ACC, and Jim Phillips' response is, the partnership with ESPN is not going away or being affected in a negative way at all. There's no negative effect from a TV contract standpoint when your top two bell cows leave. It's a look in. says Phillips, and we're handling some of the particular element of the contract states. We're handling that particular element of the contract states. Yes. The ESPN can look in at 2025 into not renewing the contract again. I don't know if that's just a piece. This is not the only stupid thing that Jim Phillips has done in the last week or that the ACC in general has dealt with. They also brought in, this is so unbelievably nuts to me, they brought in Joe Lunardi to speak to conference basketball coaches about how they can get more teams in the NCAA tournament. What? Andrew Carter reports ACC men's basketball coaches heard from ESPN bracketologist Joe Lunardi at a spring meeting today about how league can get more teams in the NCAA tournament. This is not a joke. He actually put in the tweet, because how embarrassing this is. This is not a joke. Lunardi was an invited guest here to give a talk. Oh, God. Tony Bennett's in the room. Tony Bennett's over there. National championship coach of Virginia. This is like you have David Blaine. You're like, yeah, we're at a Magic convention. We have David Blaine here for free. He could get up and talk to everyone about how to do better Magic. But nope, we brought Mike the Magic guy. Everybody give it up for Mike. Joe Lunardi. Joey Brackets, right, guys? They call him Joey Brackets. It's funny. Joe, can you get up there and tell our coaches how to get our teams into the NCAA tournament? What? So first, your commissioner is making completely asinine comments about the state of your TV contract. Then you're bringing in Mike the Magic Guy. When David Blaine's sitting across the room and you're making Mike the Magic Guy explain to David Blaine what magic is. Not only that, but Virginia and NC State have scheduled a home-and-home non-conference series. What? For 2025 and 2026, also per Brendan Marcello. It is dumbfounding. You have conference opponents scheduling non-conference games against one another. And maybe, I get there are comments that are like, oh, you're reading too far into this. Probably not a good thing. When your conference, like Alabama is not saying, hey, we want to make sure we play Vanderbilt as a non-conference team next year. Like, that's just not a thing that happens. We don't really do that. The ACC's done it a couple times, actually. I don't think this round is as benign as the last few have been. That's not good. We don't have conference teams scheduling non-conference games against each other. That's unbelievable. Coming up, the NCAA files for bankruptcy. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends at Yahoo Finance. Look, I am 23 years old and have zero idea what I'm doing when it comes to finance, and I just recently learned what a Roth IRA is. Do you know what a Roth IRA is? I didn't until I had to figure it out because I'm an adult now. And Yahoo Finance has actually helped me not just figure that out, but also consolidate it. So you got an investment account with Schwab, a 401k with Fidelity. You use Yahoo Finance to consolidate them into one place. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for the extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. Securely link your brokerage accounts for a unified view of your wealth, including the 401k and other investments. Comprehensive perspective in what sets apart great investors and how Yahoo Finance ensures you have insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. With a community of over 90 million users each month, their strength is helping you on your way to financial success. Your comprehensive financial news and analysis is at yahoofinance.com, the #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. The NCAA could be on the verge of filing for bankruptcy if they do not soon settle with the House. In the looming House versus NCAA case, there is a settlement on the table worth $2.7 billion. Now, granted, that is a lot of money, and it's not going to be something the NCAA wants to pay. But as put by Ross Dellinger, if they reject a proposed settlement offer, officials from the NCAA and power conferences stand to face a catastrophic $20 billion price tag in back damages, as well as risking a bankruptcy filing, according to documents obtained by Yahoo Sports. The way that Dellinger unpacks this is if that $20 billion price tag is tabbed on and the NCAA is liable for that, then bankruptcy is probably the only move for Charlie Baker and company. The settlement, per Dellinger, believed to be in the final stages of adoption, consists of three main concepts. And this settlement that moves it down to $2.7 billion is still much less than $20 billion, but will affect you, yes, you and your school. Dellinger, the concepts, three concepts of the settlement: billions in back damages, a new compensation model permitting schools to share as much as $22 million annually with athletes in a capped system, and an overhaul of the NCAA scholarship and roster structure. The one that I will circle first there is that $22 million price tag. Here's where we start talking about whether or not we kill off the back end of the Big 12 and how we move forward as a conference and whether or not the conference can stay alive. That $22 million price tag, in essence, will be the NCAA telling its member schools, hey, you have the opportunity to pay your student athletes a maximum of $22 million a year. You can choose to opt out of that, and if you do, you will die. Or you can pay them less, and if you pay them less, that's also not a good thing. That's going to really kill college athletics as we know it, even more so than realignment, quite possibly. And maybe the thesis of that, you read that and you go, that's not good. That's probably not good. And you read and you go, oh, wow, the NCAA is getting sued and is going to lose at least $2.7 billion in the settlement. And if they don't settle, they're likely going to lose in court and have to pay $20 billion. And that money, guess where it comes from? A portion, colleges. Like the NCAA can't keep doling out big sums of money to the schools they usually do. I mean, power schools could lose $1 or $2 million a year from the governing body of college athletics. That poses the question that I think a lot of SEC and Big Ten officials, at the very least, have been asking for a while, and that's, what are we doing here? Why are we still in the NCAA? What is the point of hanging around this governing body if we could kind of just go over there and do it ourselves? The desperation from Charlie Baker, the president, and others has been apparent for close to a year now. You'll remember, if you're an everyday listener, that maybe 6 or 8 months ago, he mentioned that, hey, what if we had the kind of this almost quasi super league, like teams that could afford this revenue share of $22 million per year for their student athletes could make their own big super thing where you create your own rules. He almost created a playpen for the big boys of college football and says, hey, the grounds are still owned by the NCAA. Like we still are over you, but this playpen over here is your playpen and you decide what you get to do over there. That is a move of desperation. Charlie Baker's trying to cater to the major conferences and major powers of college athletics that are not himself to ensure that these schools stay put and hopefully stay happy. But how do you stay happy when you hear, like if I am Arkansas and I say I can pay that $22 million, sure. Why am I losing $1 million, $2 million a year because of revenue in the next 10 years because you lost $2.7 billion or $20 billion? The NCAA is consolidating its operations by $18 million. Like, business isn't booming for those guys. And it's actually hurting Big 12 schools, maybe even more so than a lot of the SEC powers. We'll get to that later on in the show. But if you're Arkansas, you look at that and you say, I don't think we have to do this. We can just go over and play with somebody else. We're one of the big boys. I think we're going to be okay. And we're not like in Alabama, so those schools certainly don't have to worry about too much of the money side. But, hey, we still do, and we don't think we like this. Let's just try to not. And if you're a Big 12 school, if you're Iowa State, you look at it and you go, okay, so you're telling us we're losing $2 million a year in revenue from the NCAA. You're going to cut our salary by $2 million for just being a part of your organization. And not only that, you're also going to charge us $22 million a year to pay the student athletes. If we don't pay that $22 million, then we're not a part of the upper echelon of college athletics and we're going to inevitably die. That's not good either. The business model not being there. That's the first thing you understand, is that business is not booming and the model is not there. And the second thing is, with that, I don't know how much longer a Brett Yormark or a Greg Sankey or the athletic director at Arkansas is going to sit there and say, yeah, we'll keep doing this. We'll keep putting up for the NCAA and we'll make it work. No, there isn't enough to hold on to latch onto with the NCAA for these guys to stay put. Documents specify per Dellinger, perhaps for the first time in writing, the total amount in back damages owed to athletes for the use of their name, image, and likeness before the NCAA lifted NIL prohibitions in 2021. That amount is $2.776 billion. The NCAA, he says, is responsible for paying the amount over a 10-year period, roughly $277 million annually. 60%. 60% of that $277 million will come from a reduction in distribution to its schools. Hey, I am Texas Tech, Kirby Hocutt. You, NCAA, made a mistake. You, NCAA, got sued, and you lost. And now we're the ones having to pay for it. You were not forthright enough in all of this. And now power leagues are anticipating a reduction of $1 to $2 million per year in distribution, according to the document. So that's, the craziest part is like the 2.7 is still large, but as Dellinger notes, the documents say the tab will be significantly larger, again, 20 billion plus, and the timeline significantly shorter with a loss in court. The document outlines settlement pros and cons and offers alternatives. If the settlement is rejected, if the NCAA loses in court, for some, an expected outcome based on previous legal results, and the estimated 20 billion is in damages that would be payable immediately and not over 10 years. So it's pay $20 billion now or settle out and pay your $2.7 billion today. And either way, it's not good. That's not good for the teams and the schools that are out there. And the money that's not going to go to the member institutions, the NCAA member institutions. Oops. Sorry. NCAA did bad. We'll fix it. The government will. Coming up, Brett Yormark is great. Thank God for Brett Yormark on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Look, I love the classic Monopoly, and I play it as much as I can when I'm around the campfire with friends. We always bring the old board game. However, if I'm on the road, which I often am with the Savannah Bananas and Party Animals, I have to play Monopoly in a different way. I play Monopoly Go. It's game off for a second as we pause to talk about Monopoly Go. I know I've already talked about it a lot this week, but it's because I like it a lot. Unique stickers that you can trade with friends to complete big albums for big prizes are available for you right now, as well as cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings and heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or robot pachinko machine. There are always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. Get off the bench. Go download it now for free on Google Play and the Apple Store. It's Monopoly Go. Game on. Brett Yormark is an expansion genius, guru, saint. Right now, athletic directors and conference commissioners more than ever have to be businessmen. This is per On3 Eric Prispel. With House settlement looming, schools try to answer the $20 million question. In the House versus NCAA case, the NCAA could lose $20 billion or, at probably best, $2.7 billion. And as a result of this case, schools are going to have to dole out to student athletes $22 million. The revenue sharing aspect is going to be everyone looks around and says, we have to give the kids money. And if we don't give them $22 million, which is the cap, basically your salary cap, if we don't do that, we're going to be seen as a school that is poor, a school that cannot facilitate student athletes the way that a program like Ohio State or Alabama could. If you want to be the top of college football, you're going to have to pay that $22 million price tag. Where does Brett Yormark come into this? It's the business aspect. In the changing world of college sports, you see Green Bay hired Doug Gottlieb as their basketball coach. And when the athletic director was prodded on, he said, guess what? There is a wild amount of change, especially in the mid-major game in college athletics right now. Why wouldn't I do this? Let's try something different because everything is moving toward different. And what you need more than anything in different is a businessman. Is someone who understands the industry. Per On3, that is certainly the highest priority of conversation right now. That priority being schools and conferences convening to discuss university-specific playbooks for financial viability in a new world order. Trev Alberts at Texas A&M, again per On3, announced cuts of more than 12 staff members. 12 staff members in a reorganization related to existing and emerging threats to their business model. At Missouri, the contract for the new AD includes a force provision related to potential changes in financial model for collegiate athletics. Iowa State, Iowa State. Jamie Pollard, the athletic director, as this On3 post continues, decided last week that, we can't really do anything from a facility standpoint as it sits because we might have to pay our athletes $20 million plus. That $20 million question has led to a stop in many Big 12 programs when it comes to building new facilities. Pollard, direct quote, with this lawsuit getting ready to be settled, you just can't go forward with projects like that, Pollard told reporters. college sports on the cusp of a revenue sharing model. He plans for a new wrestling facility and then had to stop that new wrestling facility. He continued the quote with, "That's the same reason we didn't go forward with Hilton Coliseum. You just can't bond for them." There is a drastic change. There is a very specific change in college athletics. Jamie Pollard is at an understanding right now that whatever he is paying, whatever his current costs are at Iowa State, are going to increase tenfold. That's not going to get cheaper before it gets drastically more expensive, thanks to paying student athletes $22 million. And again, if you don't pay that $22 million, you're not seen as a top dog in college athletics. So Brett Yormark, in this scenario, becomes the king of college football as he is so business-minded. This guy is not, somebody was quoted as saying 6 months ago or so that Brett Yormark's first love was college athletics and that he is college first and that he puts, kind of just like love of the game and almost the pomp and circumstance of what college football and college sports are. That's what matters to Brett Yormark. And I think that's the stupidest thing in the world. Brett Yormark is focused first on making this as business savvy as possible. What we know is like 3 years ago, the Big 12 lost Texas and Oklahoma. And you thought, okay, well, this is similar to where the ACC is now, except they have an incompetent commissioner. We look around the room and we see, okay, Texas and Oklahoma left. So we're not going to exist anymore. Bob Busby somehow goes and grabs 4 schools in UCF, Houston, BYU, and Cincinnati, and says, go, take off. And we'll talk about in tomorrow's show how those 4 might not have been the right choices from a financial aspect. Brett Yormark comes in and says, I have to be a businessman. I have to go get more schools from the Pac-12 and put this conference back together so that it can survive. This wasn't it would be so fun to see Utah play Kansas State. That would be exciting and exhilarating, and that would tickle my little college sports fans' funny bone. That's not what Yormark's saying. What it was is, Utah can make us as a league money. So I'm going to go get Utah. So can Colorado, Arizona State. That's probably the reason at this point that Washington State and Oregon State have not been added, because money is now the name of the game to Yormark. And he's still got that pomp and circumstance side, right? Putting the Big 12 championship football game on the Jumbotron in Times Square in New York City. He did the Big 12 Mexico thing they talked about for a while, the BAPE Jazz and WWE stuff and the Big 12 title. Like that he's got the try to grow and be different side. But then the business side of, when does grow and be different not make financial sense? Well, Mexico being an example. Yormark comes out and says, you know what? Scrap it. We'll figure it out later. There is more pressing stuff to work on when the NCAA is in a lawsuit that's going to charge our member schools in the Big 12 $22 million a year. Some of this, not all of this, but a portion of this falls on the conference commissioner to help guide his league, his athletic directors and presidents into handling an era where things just got much more pricey. And Brett Yormark's the perfect guy to do that. He is business-minded first before he is college football-minded. And if it makes enough sense tomorrow to go out and grab a Washington State, he's going to do it. I'm shocked with recent numbers, how profitable basketball is, especially in the Big 12. We'll talk more about that tomorrow, but I think the progression of this conference staying alive moving forward could lead into basketball and be okay. The ACC decided to do that and almost died because of it and will likely not exist with that being a certain factor. The Big 12 could pull it off. If done right, the Big 12 is the only conference that could pull it off. And Brett Yormark is the guy that I want there making those decisions. He is, in my opinion, not just the perfect commissioner for the Big 12, but financially the best commissioner in the country. He is the businessman. When we talk about how athletic directors are going to have to become more business savvy, when Missouri says they need a financially sound athletic director, when A&M's laying off people so they can hire people who are more money oriented, the Big 12 needs a money oriented commissioner. And that's Brett Yormark. Big. This has been, it always will be. Come back tomorrow. We meet with Jeff Fuller. Oh, yeah. I use that dude's research all the time. He's a pretty smart guy. Locked On. Thanks for making this your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.